Welcome, Serie A fans, to another episode of the Total Football Analysis Serie A podcast. My name is Daniele Proc, and I'm joined today, as usual, by football analyst Steve Coleman. How you doing, Steve?
Yeah, morning. How you going?
Pretty good. And I'm also joined by professional center back for North Carolina FC and La Liga podcast contributor, Alex Comzia. What's up, Alex?
All good here. Thanks for having me back.
And last but by no means least, allow me to celebrate the return on the show of the prodigal son, Chris Mumford, who joins the Serie A podcast after taking a short break. How does it feel to be back, Chris?
Fabulous. Fabuloso. So happy to be back with the boys.
So this past weekend, Serie A returned to action. Nothing seemed to have changed for Atalanta, who rolled over Sassuolo 4-1 at Stadio Bentegodi in Verona. Hellas pulled off yet another great performance against Cagliari, thanks to a 2-1 victory that allows them to now just sit 1 point shy of sixth place Napoli, which means Europa League. And today, on Tuesday, June 23rd, they're going to go face off. But today we'll dive deep into the two other games that were played this past weekend, starting with Inter against Sampdoria. And Steve will tell us how Conte was able to go past Ranieri in Sunday's matchup.
Yeah, thanks, Danny. Brilliant game. I thought it was a fantastic tactical battle between two high-quality coaches in their respective teams. It's a really interesting kind of backstory. Inter led so far in Serie A this season for over 1,000 minutes, which tells you how quickly they start and how quickly they get in front. But on the flip side of that, Sampdoria have only led for 156 minutes in their games. So if you remember last week, I talked about the fact they'd only scored 6 goals in their entire first halves of any game they played so far. So no wonder that there was going to be a slow start and potentially a slow burning, fascinating tactical battle, which is exactly what we got. What did you think of the first kind of 15, 20 minutes?
It was a great start by Inter. And around the 10th minute, we already had the Lukaku scoring his 18th goal of the season. It was clear that Inter was furious about their Coppa Italia loss, and they expressed all their energies, I would say, in the first half.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they had a goal disallowed, obviously, in the first couple of minutes for offside. Candreva gets down the side, and he's just offside as he delivers into the box. And I think that was a bit of a sign of the things to come, really. First 15, 20 minutes, I thought Inter were electric. They played through Sampdoria into the top line so well, into Lukaku, and even Martinez on the other side. They played into their feet. And once they do that, as we've spoken about with Inter before, they get runners either beside, beneath, or beyond the ball. And Lukaku, especially dragging Colli out of the line to open space for people to run beyond him, was fantastic. And it certainly shows that if you can't compete physically with Inter, then you'll struggle to compete in the game. And I think you guys have got some issues with the Samp midfield, but I think when the ball travels past you so quickly, and you've got to deal with runners going left, right, and centre, it even makes Eriksen look athletic by any standards, to be honest. But his influence in the first 50 minutes as well was magnificent, getting on the ball in those little pockets of space, and the runners going beyond Lukaku, especially for the first goal, for example, were sensational.
Oh, the first goal, like the pass by Eriksen, was just unreal. First time pass with his left foot, just straight on Lukaku's run, and all he had to do was really beat the keeper on a 1v1. 8 yards out.
Yeah, I mean, even before that, with the pass from Candreva into Martinez, Lukaku drags 2 defenders with him towards the ball. The ball goes over the top of him into Martinez's feet, and like I was saying earlier, the runners then beyond the ball or supporting underneath the ball are so difficult to deal with. And even Eriksen's getting in front of his defender going towards the opposition goal, and it's fantastic combination play by the two of them to create such an easy finish. It looks fantastic, but it's hours and hours of work in that training ground for sure.
Steve, my take on it is it looked like an NBA fast break is what it was, and they all happen to be many of them happen to be former EPL players, and
absolutely.
I'll tell you, it seemed like Samp's defense particularly their midfielder, it seemed like they were jogging in the park, right? Or an NBA All-Star game defense. I just was struck by, I'd love to hear Alex's view, but I didn't see any sense of urgency in the midfield coming back. And, you've got three guys in the back and you've got this furious, almost like White Walkers in blue and black coming at you, these zombies coming at you. And the midfield's jogging back. Alex, do you have a take on that?
I think the second goal sums it up, right? So we talked about Collie getting dragged out. You have to look at the way his recovery run is shaped, and then his body position. He does not check his shoulder at all to see what's behind him and what's the tooth guys running into the box. They are the biggest threat. In theory, doubling down in a 1v1 out wide, it's not that bad of a decision if you have cover from your midfielders if you're Samp. So, one of the keys for me there is Candreva's run. How is it that Candreva is in his own half? He plays the ball down to Lukaku, and then he's the one assisting the goal. He runs all that distance, and then the Samp midfielders can't even run half that distance to cover the top of the box. So we can blame Collie individually, but for me, it's just, all the way through, there's a disconnect there, a lack of intensity, a lack of communication, and bad body positioning and decision-making overall.
So I discussed this goal offline with Alex, and I think the mistake for Sampdoria begins earlier than that. When Candreva plays that fantastic pass to Lukaku, that 60-yard pass to him, I think the Sampdoria defender has to stay closer to Lukaku, because what he did, in my opinion, he allowed him to go on a 1v1. For instance, me as a striker, if you allow me to get you on a 1v1, that's money.
So there, Daniele, I disagree a little bit, because he has no cover. And you have to look at who he's playing against. Lukaku was going to get there before him no matter what.
Yeah.
He was not going to get there before Lukaku. And as a defender myself, I want to delay Lukaku. I want him to dribble a little bit, so I give time to my, hopefully, in this case not so much, my midfielders and defenders to come back and recover. So in this case, I feel like if he was to get too close, Lukaku could have bumped him off, and then the space would have been a clear run towards goal. So I agree with you if he can get there and win the ball 100%. But if there's even a little chance that Lukaku might touch it before he gets there, I wouldn't go for it. I would have done the same play. Having said that, I still don't think his footwork and his intensity of moving and dealing with him was good enough, but I don't think I would have dived in like that. That's just my take.
Especially because then he allows Lukaku to go on his left foot, which is his predominant foot.
Yeah. Once Lukaku cuts to his left, he should have stepped harder. Why? Because he's cutting to his left. He's probably going to pass or cross. And two, he has Collie right beside him. It's 2 against 1. There's no point of staying off Lukaku. You can press him. If he dribbles past you, he has cover from Collie. So,
and we know
not even that. The position of the two of them, the job of the centre back is to defend the goal, right? So in those wide areas, the job is to protect the width of the goal, and they leave a 3 versus 1 basically by both of them actually jumping out and defending in the wide area. So I understand that they might go out and defend Lukaku 1 versus 1, but it's certainly in that situation doesn't need both of them to be in that area of the pitch. One of them should be in defending the goal for sure, and that's why Martinez has got such an easy finish, because the runner from deep, all he's doing is helping the ball on. But it's a fantastic pass from Lukaku inside. It's something that's probably not talked about a lot in his game, is the little subtleties and his little touches of quality around those areas. But yeah, 3 passes from recovery to score is pretty clinical from their perspective. But you have to give a lot of credit to Ranieri, I think, in this game. I think he recognised quickly that Plan A wasn't quite coming off. And it was difficult for them to get high up the pitch. They obviously changed their system. In their last game, they played with a 4-4-2. This one, they obviously tried to match up Inter and have a go, try and match up the wing backs and try and get up the pitch that way. But the first half an hour, there was just no chance of them getting out of their own area, because Lukaku and Martinez's positioning was very interesting. They spent a lot of time on the outside of the two widest centre backs, so they were constantly pinning the back five in with just two players. And when one of them was Lukaku, it's so dangerous for them to kind of step out and try and get forward. So Ranieri at half time, I don't know if you noticed such a big change. He actually went to more of a flat four in midfield rather than a box in midfield like he did in the first half. And straight away, second half, they got hard at the pitch. They went after the ball a lot more. They pressed much higher, and they actually forced Candreva and Young back and back and back. And they got a hold in the game without actually having a hold in the game, if that makes sense. You know, Ranieri tried to control the game without the ball as opposed to with the ball. And I think it made a real difference in the second half for sure.
Do you see any similarities with the concepts that Ranieri tried to apply at Leicester the year that he won the Premier League?
100%. I mean, they were hamstrung because the main man at the top was pulled out late through injury. So that was a big impact. They didn't have his threat, but in the first half they tried to play a little bit like that from deeper, and obviously it didn't work with the numbers around trying to get around the ball. But second half they certainly were a lot more compact defensively through that midfield area, to the point where the wing back actually a lot of the time wasn't pressing the opposition wing back. It was the wide midfield player that was getting out and doing that, who was the 10 in the first half in a kind of midfield box that he was using. But yeah, playing off the target man at the top and getting players around him, and then just being dangerous from set pieces. I mean, the goals come from a set piece. It's a pretty ugly one really in the grand scheme of things, but it certainly gave him a bit of belief. And I have to say, Inter were a little bit panicked in the last 15, 20 minutes, and potentially could have gone either way. But the stats don't show that. Obviously, it's 78% to 22, and you know, I think there was 17 shots Inter had, but it was a lot closer than perhaps the stats suggested.
Yeah, and now with this win, Inter sits third in the table with 57 points, 5 points shy of Lazio, and 6 points ahead of Atalanta. Do you think that Inter can be satisfied with that? Are they too far to compete for the race title, or you think they actually have a real shot at it?
I think they're happy with where they're at. I think they've got better in every game that I've seen them play so far. Every week they look a little bit more like Conte's team, but I think they'll be happy where they are. With Samp, obviously that result in that catch-up game could have been a real kickstarter to their jumping away from the relegation zone. But you know, they're right in the mix now, and if teams around them win, then you know they've got a real issue.
Yeah, speaking of relegation zone, another important game was played this weekend. Torino hosted Parma, and while Parma traveled comfortably to Turin, since they were sitting at 35 points, Torino entered the game with more urgency. They were only 2 points above the relegation zone, and they were coming off of a streak of 7 straight losses. And we talked about how Torino has really dropped their performance. This game, they lined up with a 3-4-3, and they really showed a desire to attack right away. The coach Moreno Longo started 4 attacking-minded players like Belotti, Zaza, Edera, and Berenguer. On the other end, D'Aversa opted for a 4-4-2 with one big striker, Cornelius, supported by evergreen Gervinho. And I have one cool to know fact that I'm gonna throw into this game. Parma center back Bruno Alves is 38 years old, and he is the oldest center back in the league. What that does add to his skill set, Alex? How can his experience help out in the back?
He's still kicking, man.
Yeah. He is.
At that point, it just becomes experience, right? Because you don't have the same, or ideally, unless you're Ronaldo in a few years, don't have the same athletic or physical performance capabilities. I think there's something to be said about the presence that you have on the field. This guy has played at the highest level for a long time, and the way he can teach and communicate with those around him, especially the younger players, I think is invaluable, and I think is why he's still playing at that level. And look, we can talk about his age all we want, but at the end of the day, you have to be able to perform and get the job done. And if you're capable of doing it at any age, 17, 19, 39, it doesn't matter how old you are, right?
Yeah, and he's a great free kick taker. But let's look at the highlights of the game. Let's discuss them so we can talk about how the goals originated. So minute 15, after an in-swinger corner kick from Berenguer, Torino center back Nkulu scores the 1-0 lead for Torino. Nkulu is a powerful center back, very dangerous on set pieces situations. So Alex, when you are marking powerful opponents who are dominant in the air, what can you do to throw them off and prevent them from attacking the ball comfortably?
Well, it depends. So if you're a coach, you ideally want to put your best headers, your powerful players that match up against them if you're man marking. Now, if you have a mismatch, that's a different story. So for example, I'm 6 feet. I deal with guys that are much taller than myself. So what you want to do is get good contact right away, because the idea is that they're going to run into a zone, whether it's near post, far post, right in front of the keeper. Once you notice exactly where they're running, you have to beat them to that spot. That's the idea. You're not trying to, grab onto them or trying to fall. You're trying to beat them to that spot wherever the ball arrives. And wherever the ball arrives, you want to get there first. So easier said than done when you have, powerful guys like Nkulu. This guy just needs a flick and that's it. So when you're dealing with guys that are that powerful, what I like to do is just, push them early so you disrupt their run. And then once you see where they run, you don't even watch that much of where he's going. You say, okay, he's going to go near post for sure. Keep an arm on him, and I'm going to jump first, either to put him off so he can't see the ball, or maybe I can get contact with him so that if he does get the header, it's not going to be a clean header. So it's a difficult technique. It takes a lot of practice, a lot of training. You just need to get your reps in. So
you're not going to mention all the dirty tricks that you use, like stepping on the striker's toes?
I wasn't going to mention that.
Okay.
I was thinking about mentioning stamp on their toes, but
Can you sign an NDA on that? Aren't you bound by
law? I can't do that. Fun fact about me: when I was playing for Canada U17s, I played against Costa Rica U17s in Costa Rica with a Costa Rican referee, and on corner kicks, it was.
That sounds fair.
It was not fair. With no VAR, with no video review, it was just regular game. And corner kicks were horrendous. They were like WWE takedowns. And I got spat on a few times, and I had to keep my cool. So now it's a little different with video, but yeah.
That only made you stronger, I'm sure. Let's jump to minute 30. Okay, Kucka receives a ball after a cutback pass from Gervinho from the left side. The Slovak midfielder finishes off with a left-footed striker. Chris, let's be honest, the shot was not too well angled. Sirigu got a hand on it, but really couldn't deflect it off the goal. My question for you is, was Sirigu supposed to save the shot? And how do you compare that with the save that De Gea, in my opinion, was supposed to make in this game against Tottenham?
So here's my take. First of all, if you ask a keeper to make a save on a completely uncontested shot, basically a green light special, that's a lot of work for him. Where I do find some fault with him, if I were his coach, and I never will be since he's a wildly talented pro, but if it were one of my keepers, I'd say number one is, if someone's coming in that close on the half space, you need to take a step or two out and try to cut it off, because he's got no angle to the goal. That's step number one. Step number two is basically where, I hear a lot about, well, you need to have stronger wrists or you need to have stronger hands. I think that's someone that's never taken an anatomy class before, because your wrists have ligaments. There are no muscles on the wrists, right? And hands, if you're a professional keeper, you've got freakishly strong hands because you catch the ball hundreds of times every day. Where I can find fault with him is, and he's 33 years old, right? I mean, he was the UNFP goalkeeper of the year when he was at PSG, right? So he is the real deal. He's ranked 16th.
And he still gets called up for the national team. So he's absolutely good.
So he's the real deal. But he made just a blocking and tackling goalkeeper mistake is you need to be moving forward, right? Your hands need to be moving forward with your arms and your body weight going forward. So if the ball comes off, then the ball is able to be deflected off more, right? So that's the second mistake he made, is you have to be diving at an angle forward rather than more towards backwards, which would allow the ball to deflect in. The third mistake he made is when that goal was scored, he should have gone to his defenders and chewed them out, because they're all standing on the 6-yard line watching the ball. And the reality is this, as Daniela, your former coach, used to say, spaces don't score goals. People do, players do. And they need to be doing a shoulder check to see where the strikers are. And then they need to be covering them rather than standing there on the 6. Alex, you may or may not disagree with me on that, but I just feel like as a keeper, you got to chew out your defenders if they're allowing for these wide open shots where.
No, I completely agree. I think they were too deep, like you said. I would add as well is the midfield. Where were the midfielders as well to cover the top of them? If you're going to be that deep, which is, you probably shouldn't be. You can say Gervinho was deep enough so that everyone was collapsing on the goal, whatever. As soon as that cutback happens, like you said, everybody should be moving forward, including the defenders, especially the defenders, because that's how you cut off the angle, right? If everyone moves forward, but also the midfielders probably could have. I forgot who was at the top of the box, but he probably could have, cut that off as well. I completely agree.
Yeah, and I do think that's the power of the cutback pass. You have all the defenders collapsing on their 6. So that's a great pass that is often effective. But let's jump to minute 48. There is a penalty kick for Torino, and it is saved by Sepe. So mistake from the spot by Torino striker Belotti. But I want to discuss the foul that led to the PK. So there is a cross from the right. Zaza strikes it. Sirigu saves it. And Torino's winger Edera sprints toward that loose ball as he's running a little away from goal. He tries to get a hold of the ball, and he gets tripped by Parma's defender Jacoponi. Alex, what do you make of that foul?
Stupid foul. I don't understand why you fouled there. It's bad positioning. You never want to get caught wrong side of the ball, or wrong side of the player, excuse me. But, stupid foul. The funny thing is, when you look back at it, the keeper was probably going to cut out that shot because he was moving forward, as Chris was mentioning. He was cutting off the angle. So that was going to make it a difficult shot. Additionally, Parma had a guy who was on the goal line who probably could have helped cut out a shot. I don't understand why he made that foul. He could have tried to, slide to cut off the angle instead of going directly behind him. That positioning I don't get. And I think the mistake goes back even further. If you look at the initial long ball that is played to get into a crossing position, I think there he gets caught ball watching, and his turn and sprint back into the box is very slow. And he allows himself to get into a position where, he's reacting instead of being proactive.
Well, the game finished 1-1, so it's at least it's a positive result for Torino, who moves forward. Now there are 3 points above relegation, and there are 2 teams, specifically Sampdoria and Genoa, between them and the first relegation slot. I know that Steve has been looking at the relegation battle. What should we expect happening at the bottom of the table?
Well, first things first, I think the game sums up why Torino are where they are. You guys talked about the mistake of the goalkeeper and the missed penalty, but the chances that they missed to win this game are criminal. There's no way this game should finish one each. Even notwithstanding the goalkeeper error, it should be comfortably Torino's 3 points. Parma were pretty poor, but they'll be pleased with the point. So, extraordinary that they're performing so badly. They're my pick to go down, Torino. I think the teams around them are performing better than they are. They've got their first point in 7 games, which is a big thing maybe, but they'll be looking at that more, that 2 points were dropped in that game for sure, I think. So it's interesting run-ins. I think they have a couple of tough ones coming up, and they're my pick to go down.
I will add that if you look at the XG Sirigu, he's had 157 shots taken on him, and he saved 46 of those, and he had expected goals of 54. So that's a swing of 8 goals. So imagine if those 8 goals were added to basically him doing what he was supposed to do, they would be close to the bottom of the table, if not next to the bottom. So my take is he single-handedly kept them up above the relegation zone. I don't know if he's going to be able to pull that off for the next 7 or 8 games.
And that's why
they concede 14.7 shots per game. I think off the top of my head is the number, and you just can't do that. You can't do that against good sides. No question.
And Steve, you talked about how Torino struggles to score. If there are 2 sides that really do not struggle to score, they are Atalanta and Lazio. They are the 2 best attacking sides in Serie A, respectively, with 74 and 60 goals. And they will go face off this Wednesday at the Stadio Atleti Azzurri d'Italia in Bergamo. Kickoff at 8:45 p.m. UK time. And Lazio is going to line up with the classic 3-5-2. I'll highlight here Acerbi, the center back. He's having a great season. Number 10, Luis Alberto, and the coach and striker Ciro Immobile. Lazio can count on the league's top scorer, Immobile, with 27 goals, and the assist leader, Luis Alberto, with 10. The reason why I highlighted Acerbi is because this center back, he survived testicular cancer twice in his life. He's now 32 years old. And there's a very cool TFA piece in the June magazine that I suggest you all go check out. It's about the story of this incredibly strong center back. He has been recently called up again in the national team by Mancini. Alex, I know you like him. What is the best quality that you admire about Acerbi?
Well, as you mentioned, mental strength. I mean, that is first and foremost on and off the field. That translates into the whole club, into the whole organization, and especially the players. I can just imagine if I was playing next to him, how much more I'd want it, just for what he's gone through. But specifically, he reminds me of a left-footed PK type of style, right? He's so good technically. He's very strong physically, but it's almost graceful. It's not like in your face tough. I feel like it's very graceful, very thought out. It's like he is tough, but it's well timed, and I really appreciate that as a center back as well. Amazing left foot, great distribution. Playing in a back 3 is great for him because he plays centrally, and it allows him to step hard on attacking midfielders and forwards that come into the pocket. And I think he really likes that. He likes playing with players in front of him so he can make those challenges and those tackles. So exceptional player, very, very smart, and I'm glad to see him doing so well and Lazio doing so well this year.
And he's not the only leader for Lazio in the back, because even goalkeeper Strakosha, he's having an incredible season. And Chris, I know you're dying to highlight his performances. He made our pre-COVID team of the year a few weeks ago. Chris, what has set Strakosha aside from the other Serie A goalkeepers?
Well, the Albanian national is 25 years old. He's got over 2,500 minutes, which means he hasn't had time to even run off and go to the loo. He's so busy defending that goal. He's conceded only 0.83 goals per game. And he's worked his way up Lazio during the last 5 years, from third string to Loni to first string. He is the prototypical goalkeeper for Serie A. Big frame, 6'4" and above, 193 centimeters for the rest of the world. But he's surprisingly agile for his size. He's the modern day keeper, equally comfortable with kick saves and drop dives to his sides. And it's really hard to find that combination. When I go down to Buenos Aires and La Plata, Alejandro Cortizo, who's the goalkeeper director for Estudiantes, says that's what they're all shopping for, is 6'5" keepers that can play with their feet, right? So Thomas has the benefit of a first-rate defense in front of him, but he's pulled more than his weight. He's allowed a league-leading of only 23 goals on 111 shots with an XG of 29. So he's kept an extra 6 goals out of the net, which is more than 20%. What I like most about him is his timing and maturity. He's got crazy reaction speed, no question about that, but he anticipates so well and is often on the ball before strikers are able to settle. This maturity should come as no surprise, though, because his father was also a professional keeper. I imagine the father-son trainings and the dinner table talk prepared him well, technically and tactically. He will be a difference maker coming down a very difficult stretch with matches against Juve, Atalanta, Verona, Napoli, and Milan. So, he is the real deal. He already rates in the top 10 goalkeepers in the big 5 leagues, and he's going to become a sturdy fixture in international football going forward.
Yeah, and Lazio has, as you mentioned, the best defense in the league and the second best striker. Let's look at Atalanta. They're going to line up with a 3-4-2-1. The wingbacks will be Atabor and Gosens. Incredible work from these two players so far this season. And I want to highlight that Atalanta has 3 of the top 7 goal scorers in the league. I'm talking about Ilicic. He has 15 goals and 0 penalty kicks. And then Muriel and Zapata, they both have 13 goals. But Atalanta manages to score with almost all their players. So the wingback Gosens has 7 goals so far this season. Midfielders, Deron has 1, Freuler has 2. The defensive line that's going to start against Lazio, Palomino, Toloi, and Jim City, they all have scored already. Captain Alejandro Gomez has scored 6. And of those featuring on Wednesday against Lazio, only Atebor hasn't found the back of the net yet. But as the Valencia fans can remember, he scored a brace in the Champions League round of 16 back in February. So he knows how to attack the space with the far post run. You know what I'm going to expect? I think that I'm going to throw in some cool to know facts here. So Lazio has the highest rate of PKs in favor this season. They have been awarded 14 penalty kicks, and the league average is 6. That's also helped Immobile because he scored 10 penalty kicks. So what I think we should expect from this game, it's going to be a great game if you guys want to learn how to properly play with 3 men in the back. It will be an open game, high intensity, and I would say it's the best matchup you can currently ask for in Serie A for entertainment, quality of the game, and tempo. If I were to go on a limb and predict the score, I'll go with a 2-2 score, braced by Immobile, one of the goals coming off penalty kicks, and then I would say Atabor scores his first Serie A goal. And then we're going to see some magic by De Gramma, Ilicic, maybe with a curler with his left foot on the far post. What do you guys think? What do you expect to see in this game?
You need to get off the fence. So you're saying there's not going to be a winner in this one?
Oh, okay. Now I'm going to say 2v2 because I do want to see a lot of goals and a great show as these teams have always shown. Mind that Lazio are able to perform greatly in the first half. They have put so many games to bed in the first 45 minutes of the game, but I don't think that's going to happen against Atalanta because their rhythm, their intensity have been consistent for 90 minutes. And the top three of Lazio, they will play with Luis Alberto as a 10, Caicedo and Immobile as strikers. They have combined 39 goals. And the top 3 of Atalanta, which will be Gomez as a 10, and then Ilicic and Zapata, they have 34 goals altogether. And we also can expect Muriel coming on the second half just to add to Atalanta's offensive threats. So we say a lot of goals, and I'm gonna go with a 2-2 because as a non-fan, I just want to see some show. What Alex? So we talked about how both teams play with 3 in the back. What are the main differences in playing with 3 versus 4?
depends how you play the three, because sometimes three is actually five for a lot of teams. So if you're playing three the way I know it's a lot of horizontal shifting. The three go back to the left, back to the right, because they have to cover more space. What's nice is if you have the fullbacks, wingers, whatever you want to call them, out wide, is if they're good at covering, it allows those three to step. And we talked about that with the Cherubis, to step really hard on the attacking midfielders and the strikers, which, I love as a player as well. So three in the back works well depending on the personnel you have. Some teams like the two center backs, because they like those players to, really stay on the right side, or the right center back to stay on the right side, the left center back to stay on the left, and they don't, shift over as much horizontally. But it all depends. I've been a part of both systems, and it depends on the personnel you have.
Steve, since you guessed right the last game, and I know you texted me personally about it, give me your scoreline here.
Well, I think watching the Atalanta game over the last couple of days, they were so dominant in that first game, that catch-up game. I just think they've got so much creativity in that top line. They create space for Gomez to dominate high up the pitch. Zapata's so clinical, in the right areas. I think they win this game. I think you're right. There's goals in it for sure, but I think they win the game. They've scored now 78 goals, I think, in the league, and I think they're rightly the most dangerous team to defend against. I think if they're going to play with both teams play with three against two front men, I think that'll be an interesting battle, dealing with the different threats that both teams have. But yeah, I think Atalanta win, and I think they win 3-1.
Huh. If Atalanta win, then the title race Juventus may widen the gap for the title race, because right now Juventus is standing 1 point above Lazio, and Juventus is playing actually right now as we're speaking against Bologna. So Lazio really cannot afford dropping points. But let's switch to another game of the weekend. We're going to have Milan against Roma. It could be the last chance for these teams to hop on the Europa League and Champions League trains, respectively. Steve, what should we look for in this matchup?
Well, I think from Milan, more of the same. I think that you're going to find that they're going to be dangerous from central areas. I think if Ibra continues to dominate that kind of pivot point at the top, he's gonna play in the game. Do you think?
We don't know yet. It's he's question marked.
Right. Okay. Still question mark. Well, if he does come back in, I think that makes a big difference for them. I think it's an interesting game. I think that Roma obviously being so dangerous in those central areas, I think it creates a very, very interesting midfield battle for sure. And I don't see a winner in this one, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's got stalemate in it. I think it's got not 0-0, but maybe 1-1 kind of situation for sure.
Yeah, Roma is standing kind of in a no man's land. There are 45 points, and they're 6 points behind Atalanta and 7 points above Napoli.
Yeah.
So we can say that they have secured a Europa League spot. I don't think they really have any chance trying to get to Champions League, right?
No, I agree with you on that. It's one of those games where the season's winding down and potentially people are pretty comfortable with where they're at, and it's one of those games that there'll be a little bit of action, but it'll be a game that doesn't carry much weight on either side, I don't think.
Yeah, and AC Milan have their last chance probably to try to make it to the Europa League, especially if they try to attract big players. They at least have to play some kind of European competitions. Before we wrap up, Steve has a cool quiz for us to put together some data, and he's going to test us on our knowledge about Serie A. Go ahead, Steve. I'm all ears.
Yeah, we're not quite at the stage where we're going to have a new segment for a quiz each week, but I just got some interesting information around teams that are performing where they should be, or underperforming, or overperforming based on the X points, which I know is very close to Chris's heart. So, just out of interest, as a bit of a pop quiz, who do you think the most overperforming team in the league are right now, according to the X point?
Atalanta.
AC Milan
Atalanta.
overperforming.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go with Juventus.
Okay. What makes you say those teams?
Just a feeling. I feel like they haven't really played great. I feel like the ideas of Sarri haven't been really implemented in the team, and so I'm thinking that's just a feeling as a football fan.
I agree with that. I mean, if you look at the goal differential, Juventus and Inter more or less have the same goal differential, but there's a 6-point difference, right? So I'd say Juventus as well.
Okay, interesting. So all of the top three are overperforming. So everyone in the top three is overperforming, but Juventus are overperforming by 16.7 points.
Wow.
Let's go.
How many?
16.7.
Wow. That's crazy.
So if they were at where they should be, according to their X point, they'd have 46 points, which would put them in 5th position.
Whew. Wow. You know what? That comes down to winning teams is just win the game. You know, how many times have we talked about it? How
I think a lot of it comes down to luck too. I mean, that to me, it's just if we run this simulation another 1,000 times, I think Juventus is not in first, and Inter could be in first, right? I mean,
and potentially the Ronaldo factor.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So interestingly, just in that top half of the league there, so Atalanta are actually underperforming too, but they're underperforming by 6 points. So according to where the league is now, they could be 3rd. But if everybody's X point were actually where they should be, they would be top of the league right now.
It makes sense. With those offensive stats, you would expect them to be higher than 4th position.
Yeah. Which is why I picked them to beat Lazio, because when you expect them to do something, that they should be somewhere closer to where they should be at some point.
But Steve, this is where I have a little disconnect. Golini, he's 6'4", perennial kind of typical Serie A keeper, but he's given up 31 goals on just 81 shots with an XG of 27. So he's actually done worse than what you would expected. But what I can't get my head around, and that's to be, things change, but the 81 shots, I don't understand how Atalanta has such few shots against him. He's played over 2,100 minutes too. Any thoughts? Do they high press a lot? Do they face a lot of 1v1s, or any thoughts on that? And I'm trying to reconcile that with the performance.
Yeah, I can't believe you didn't mention Golini earlier. I thought he was outstanding against Sassuolo. I thought he kept the score at 0 long before they kind of pulled away towards the end. I thought he made 3 or 4 really good saves. Well, it's an interesting stat. I didn't know about that, but I think I wouldn't call them a massively high pressing side. But their counter pressing is something that is theirs for sure. But I think with their over attacking nature, I think they probably give up certain things that perhaps they wouldn't do if they were a bit more defensive minded, like some other teams playing with a back 3 or a 5.
Well, I'm just struck by they've given up so few shots, but the shots they did give up, they gave up a higher percentage of goals. Yeah. That's the way I unpack it.
Yeah, that's interesting. So just on the kind of back to the X point, who do you think the biggest underachievers are?
I'm not gonna cheat. I know the answer, so you guys throw some random names out there.
Well, I would have said AC Milan, but
same. I was thinking Milan.
Okay, we'll come to them shortly. But, so the bottom 2, Brescia and Spal, are underachieving by 9 and 9.7 points so far. But Sampdoria are the biggest underachievers in the league by 11 points based on the X point right now.
You know what? Sampdoria really are risking to relegate. That makes sense. But I cannot see such an important team in Serie B next year. I don't want to see it.
Let's hope not. But interestingly, Roma, AC, Verona, Udinese, and Lecce are all within 1 point either side of where they actually should be right now.
Really?
Yeah.
So I know that AC, they have the worst expected goal, the difference between expected goals and goals. So they should have scored something like 10 more goals. But you're telling me that they should have plus or minus 1 points of what they have right now?
Yeah.
Daniele's just in shock right now.
Let me just check for you. So, yeah, they're currently 36 points, and their X point is 36.9 before today's game.
Daniele, there's a 9 p.m. flight from RDU to Milan. You can be ready for the game this weekend.
Exactly. That's
they
why
need strikers. They need strikers.
That's why I'm gonna wrap up the show. I have to go, guys. Thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you, Steve, Alex, and Chris, for your perspective. I always appreciate how you guys break down the technical and tactical side of the game. All we have left to do is sit back and enjoy this week full of Serie A games. We will be back next Tuesday with another episode of the Total Football Analysis Serie A podcast. Ciao.